Welcome back. 10 days ago, Governor Ron DeSantis appeared on a panel with Donald Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, to discuss the crackdown on immigration. And part of the discussion was on the impact of businesses that no longer have access to cheap labor. And here's what the governor said.
What's wrong with expecting, like, our young people to be working part-time now? I mean, like, that's how it used to be when I was growing up. Why do we say we need to import foreigners, even import them illegally, when, you know, teenagers used to work at these resorts?
And following that idea, the Florida legislature is considering Senate Bill 918, which would weaken child labor laws in the state. Here is the bill's sponsor, State Senator Jay Collins, last week, explaining the bill before the Senate Commerce and Tourism Committee.
Frankly, we're not talking the jungle by Upton Sinclair. We're talking about them working at Publix, at Piggly Wiggly, or jobs within the industry. This is a far cry. I think often we demonize the employer because it's going to take advantage of the children. This is a parental rights thing. Parents know their kids best.
Let's be clear. This is not about empowering parents. This is all about giving the power to businesses and corporations that hire children. Right now, 16 and 17-year-olds cannot work more than 8 hours on a school day. This bill does away with that. Right now, those children are not allowed to work before 6:30 a.m. or after 11 p.m. on school nights. This bill does away with that as well. Right now, if a child does work an 8-hour shift on a school day, the business is required to give that child a 30-minute meal break. Under Senate Bill 918, businesses no longer have to give those kids a break. Just keep them working. It also does away with many restrictions protecting 14 and 15-year-olds. More than 24 speakers oppose the bill, with one summing up her opposition this way.
If your justification for passing this bill is to allow minors to help provide even more for their family, then that's just deeply shameful. You're admitting that there's a cost of living crisis so bad that kids have to choose between their education or keeping their family afloat. And instead of taking big corporations to town or tackling the affordable living crisis, you're making kids work like it's the Gilded Age. It's shameful. Employers could constantly threaten to fire the minor if they don't comply with working long, late hours, or overnight. Stop using parental rights as a cheap excuse to allow corporations to exploit child labor.
And recalling DeSantis' recent comments about having young people working more, Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith argued DeSantis was simply saying the quiet part out loud.
The quiet part being that we're somehow going to solve the current labor shortage that we have in Florida that was worsened with anti-immigrant rhetoric with child labor.
The bill narrowly passed out of committee. One Republican, State Senator Joe Gruters, voted against the bill.
I can't vote for it. I voted against the minor bill last year as well. I think we need to let kids be kids.
After the hearing, I spoke to Senator Smith.
So it does look like Senate Bill 918 probably isn't going very far. The House Speaker, towards the end of the week, came out and said that he was troubled by the bill, by different aspects of it. I noted that even, not only did Joe Gruters vote against it, but even the Republicans on the committee that you were on seemed skeptical about the bill and were sort of saying that they were voting for it now to continue the process. But it does seem like it's going away. My question is, what does it say about us that this bill made it as far as it has so far and where we are right now?
Well, it's a really sad commentary on where we are right now, Jim, as a state, which is that we're suffering a labor shortage in Florida, one that has been aggravated and made worse by Florida's anti-immigrant laws that have affected the availability of labor in the state. And all you have to do to really fully understand the desperation of the issue is listen to what Governor Ron DeSantis said last week when he basically suggested that the way we can address some of these labor shortages is by employing teenagers. Now, we know already that teenagers are able to work. They're able to work part-time. There are good protections in place to protect minors from being exploited. But legislation like this, unfortunately, suggests that the state is willing to actually put minors to work and remove child labor protections in order to address the labor shortage that we have that has been made worse by anti-immigrant laws that have driven labor and qualified workers out of the state of Florida.
You know, nobody wants to see even foreign labor who may be here undocumented exploited either. So there's got to be a better answer. And I think one of the speakers that I listened to during the hearing talked about this is also a wage issue. I mean, if you're not offering competitive salaries, if you're not offering the hourly wage that's necessary to attract employees, you know, then that's really at the heart of the issue, and it goes to the affordability crisis here in Florida.
Exactly right. And that's why, Jim, we even introduced legislation this year titled the Florida Economic Prosperity and Immigration Act, Senate Bill 1668, that does offer a better path forward specifically with those undocumented workers and workers with unregulated status that would be able to still be able to get an occupational license to go to work while still navigating our state's very complex, or I'm sorry, the country, the federal government's very complex immigration system. So the reality is that there are solutions out there, but instead what Republican lawmakers are doing is they are looking to do things like repeal child labor laws. There's even another bill that's moving through the legislative process right now, Jim, that attempts to offer workers sub-minimum wages, that basically violates our state's constitution, that guarantees a minimum wage that was approved by voters years ago when they supported the $15 minimum wage, and it would let employers just declare that a worker is an intern, which is not defined in the legislation, and that would enable them to offer sub-minimum wages. So, you know, this is not the right path forward, what Republicans are doing here. And I know that there are other solutions that are out there that include raising wages and offering better benefits. And yes, even revisiting this issue of immigration in Florida.
I want to change gears here and talk about an issue that came up almost a year ago when Governor Ron DeSantis vetoed some $30 million or so in arts funding. It seems as if a lot of that may get restored, but with certain strings attached. And I'm curious as to where you see that going now. And one of the things I read is that in the bill right now, it says that funding would be only for programs where where the programming is appropriate for all ages. You know, I guess give me your thoughts as to where we are with potentially restoring what is really a very, very tiny bit of the state's budget into arts funding.
Sure. Well, most folks who know me, I'm a senator from the Orlando area, but also former member of the Florida House of Representatives. I'm a longtime advocate of funding for the arts, not only because I love the arts, I love theater, I love music, I love museums, just like so many Floridians and tourists who visit our state do, but also because we know, based on the state's data that they have shared with us, that for every dollar in taxpayer money we invest in cultural and museum grants through that grant program in Florida, we receive $9 back in the state. It generates a tremendous amount of economic activity. It is something that both our residents and our tourists spend money on, and it's a $4 billion industry in the state of Florida. And yes, the arts industry in Florida was devastated when Governor Ron DeSantis vetoed $32 million or so in cultural and museum grants and grants from the arts industry that would have actually continued to create jobs and make our communities stronger. This year, I'm much more confident that the Florida legislature will be able to restore much of that funding and, in fact, put even more dollars in there to make sure that these grantees, which there are nearly 900 across the state of Florida who are eligible this year to receive those funds, will be made whole again after the governor issued that veto last year. And by the way, the governor has made even funding for the arts a partisan issue when he brought in all of his new demands about making sure that arts grants are appropriate for all ages. He's throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Under that standard, even entities and grantees like the Holocaust Museum in Central Florida, for example, would not meet the standard of being appropriate for all ages. And so it's best that we leave the criteria for qualification to the subject matter experts, as we currently do through the arts panel. And now it's up to lawmakers to step up and restore those funds.
I want to take a moment also to talk about another issue that the legislature may deal with. The House Speaker has talked about the idea of lowering the sales tax in the state of Florida, basically lowering it to, I think, from about 6% to 5.25%, so a sizable decrease. The sales tax, as you know, is regressive and often hurts poorer communities. Are you supportive of this? And how do you offset the money that would be saved by collecting from the state on the sales tax and not have that hurt other programs, like, for instance, the arts?
Sure. Well, it's certainly a bold proposal to reduce Florida's sales tax, which is the main revenue generator for the state of Florida. But as you just pointed out, sales tax are regressive. They basically put more of the tax burden in Florida on low-income people, and it makes it harder and harder for them to be able to have the opportunity to get ahead. So the devil is always in the details, Jim, but I am conditionally supportive of lowering the state sales tax as long as we offset that the right way and ensure that something like this is revenue neutral.
We'll be right back after the break.